Hello everyone, welcome to Link to the Past Randomizer League. I apologize for getting started a little late. Previous race ran over, so just to give everybody a quick update, my name is Arusta, my co-commentator is Lumaga, and to give everybody an update of what was missed here. So basically both runners have checked all of Kakariko. We've got a glove. The differences in items right now that you're seeing, the glove is in Chicken Hut, which has 4 guards, so it's the guards barracks. Andy was able to get it, and unfortunately DieselMartini of the long shots was not. So hopefully Diesel will go back there sometime soon. Also, I believe the sword and powder were in Escape.
I think you got a good summary of that, Arusta. Thanks. Yeah, sorry, we're coming in hot, and I don't know if you mentioned it, Bo was on Lumberjack, which both of these runners checked. So kind of an interesting seed early on, you know, hammer, half magic, glove is available. So we got most of Dark World access here. We're just waiting on that Moon Pearl.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give a bit of background on the runners for everybody who's not familiar. So DieselMartini is a bit of a newer runner with the long shots who are currently 1-3 in the league. Diesel was participated in the Go Mode podcast mentor tournament last year and has been fairly active in that community, but is otherwise a fairly newer runner. Andy, of course, needs no introduction to anybody who knows much about Rando. He's won several major tournaments, made the top 32 of the main tournament this year, and his team is currently the Pug Trio team is currently 3-1 in the league.
Yeah, definitely a known name in the community. Speaking of these teams, they are in the Lake Helia division of League, and this is kind of a stacked division. You've got Pug Trio, you've got a few other big names. So the long shots, maybe with a little bit of subtle self-awareness there, but I still believe that you know, any runner can take on any runner in League play. So let's talk about this real quick. We're in week 3. You can see that this is Randomizer, right? So we've got endomized enemies and a full boss shuffle. So we're going to see each boss at least once, and then there are 3 bosses which we will see one more time, right? So total of 13 boss fights in the game, Aga and Aga 2 not counted in that. But we have a chance to see some interesting setups at the end of these dungeons. All right, bit of divergence. We've got Andy headed up to the Zora area, has enough money, but without a Moon Pearl, has to skip out on the waterfall check. DieselMartini, though, making the Eastern play, knows where the bow is, but could be fortunate enough to find a second bow somewhere else. Eastern being a pendant, you know, not all that necessary to hold off until you get a bow, unless you, of course, need that pendant for later. So we do get our lamp, so goodbye to the dark rooms. With the bow, that would put all of Eastern in logic, so that they can get to the vanilla big key chest.
Yeah, and so let's see what's here in this chest here. Is the big key from DieselMartini.
No, chat asking, we saw where the lamp was. Lamp was in the cannonball chest in Eastern Palace. So Andy, with a good Master Sword pretty early, good to find more weaponry in the early Randomizer, just because you never know what you're going to run into. So having a Master Sword helps out. It does have the hammer, so it's a little bit more, but kind of a real short range weapon for him. Alright, Andy with that Death Warp, maybe intending to go to Dark Cross. As we go further and further into Eastern Palace.
Meanwhile, Andy going through Escape here with the key, probably going to check Dark Cross. Andy has, I think this might have been before the stream came back up, but Andy has checked the back of Escape already.
Yeah, so Dark Cross in Randomizer, when you have a dark room here, you never know what you're going to see. You could run into some Lionels or some Hinoxes in the dark. Do have access to a lamp, but Andy has not visited Eastern yet.
Yeah, pulling out the blue cane there, which is a very useful item here in Randomizer, because you have no idea what you're going to find, and especially with half magic, it lasts quite a while. So probably even, there you go, enough to get one bottle.
And DieselMartini going to take the safe route, using the lamp to get that bottle out of Dark Cross, and while Andy's going to find that lamp over on the Eastern area. Now, interesting item setup. We've got a Master Sword and a lamp, and we have a hammer and a glove. So we are either a Moon Pearl away from being in Dark World, or if that Moon Pearl is in the Dark, is somewhere that we can't access, maybe on the pyramid, we're gonna have to go to Aga.
Yeah, though it is worth noting, with a bow on Aga, that might be required anyways. One thing to note is, for those of you who aren't too familiar with Randomizer, bows are not necessarily as needed as they are in other modes, because the rooms in Eastern Palace here that Andy's going to go through near the back, which are normally hard-locked by Red Igors, who are only killed by the bows, cannot be locked by Red Igors. So really the only spot you guaranteed need bow is for pod, because the Igor statue still exists. And just to confirm in chat, yes, there is a bow on Lumberjack, and both runners did check it, so both runners are aware of that.
Yeah, kind of an interesting situation where you know it's there, is useful. And certainly if you find that plus silvers later, it makes Ganon much easier. But do you spend the time going up there? Like you said, it's only really needed for pod, but it's a good item to have.
Yeah, so it could be an Aga seed if you really need that, if pod is a crystal, or if you need to go through Aga for Moon Pearl. But if Aga is a pendant, which there's still one pendant out there, then you would, or excuse me, if pod is a pendant, then you would not necessarily need bow. Also, just since a couple people asked about it in chat, so Randomizer for this week of the tournament, it's the mode that's being played. This is the first match between the Long Shots and Pug Trio this week. There will be another match between them later in the week, I believe. Not sure exactly when, if that's been scheduled yet. But this entire week of the Randomizer League is Randomizer.
So at some point we found the powder, and that plus the hammer leads us to the hook shot. So with the glove that we know is in the chicken hut, which DieselMartini did not get, that would give us all of Death Mountain access.
Yeah, you have to think DieselMartini with now that he's got Kane is going to at least do do chicken hut here, or guards barracks as it'll look like.
Yeah, it was a bit of a barracks. We're waiting to ambush him as he goes in. This being enter, it's not really a chicken hut. Yeah, Master Sword this room, quite a bit tolerable.
Yeah, it was before the stream caught up, but Andy was able to do that with Hammer, which is very, very tricky, but definitely doable because Hammer does tempered sword damage. And to answer a question in chat, Mimic Glitch is allowed, Mimic Clip. However, in this mode, the red Igors are not allowed to show up in any spot where, or red Igors or red Mimics are not allowed to show up in any spot where they'd be required to be killed either for a key or to open a door.
Yeah, wasting no time. DieselMartini gonna take that glove and that hook shot up to Death Mountain, rescue the old man, and he's got quite a few checks up there he has access to.
Yeah, with Hammer and Hookshot, you can even go all the way through East Death Mountain, all the way then over to Hera, which is a clearable crystal, depending on the boss.
All right, and Andy, finding Blind as our first boss here in the back of Eastern Palace. I don't believe we found all 3 items, otherwise Andy likely wouldn't be here, but 3 hits for 3 phases. Down to phase 3. Can't really do the script on this version of Blind, but taking him down, no problem anyway.
Yeah, and one thing to note about Boss Shuffle, I know we discussed this a little bit earlier, but since we just saw Andy do it, and we might see Diesel do it again if we can dodge the cabbages, is that there are the 10 vanilla bosses, and they are completely randomized, and then there are the 3 duplicates in Ganon's Tower. So there are 13 boss locations and 10 bosses, and in Randomizer, you're guaranteed the settings we're using today. You're guaranteed that all 10 exist, but the 3 duplicates are completely random. Could be any of them. So when DieselMartini gets up here to Tower of Hera, if he decides to go, which looks like he's not, that boss could be a Trinex, which you can't beat without Ice Rod and Fire Rod, or it could be a Cold Stare, which requires some sort of fire source.
Yeah, he was probably just getting that heart refill. Being on 1 heart, you still got to get through like dead rocks and Tektites up at the top, so not really risking a death. Just take the reset.
Yeah, and that makes plenty of sense because, taking the reset really early is a lot easier than trying to, especially with that spike. Nice placement.
Alright, into the top / bottom of Paradox Cave to get the 2 chests, plus another 5. Is Andy going to pick up his hookshot from the bat at the well?
And mirror and shovel there in the start of Paradox Cave, whether you call it the bottom or top. Those are both very nice to have, especially since mirror, if we haven't seen the top of Spectacle Rock check, but DieselMartini can check that very easily.
Yeah, that mirror's a good find up here. Shovel this early may very well lead to something important. Just got a couple of hearts, the Book of Madura, red boomerang, and another heart piece. So there's some Desert Palace access. And actually, with the Master Sword plus that book, that opens up Ether Tablet next to Tower of Hera.
Hookshot was on the Magic Bat, to answer a question in chat.
So the only real difference between the 2 runners at this point, Andy went up to check Zora and he full cleared Eastern, whereas Diesel did neither, but did put off the gloves a little bit later. So we do have still quite a tight race in this early part of the seed.
Yeah, especially since it's worth noting that those checks up on Zora for Andy did not really pay off with anything, so you have to think it's very likely that DieselMartini might make that play at some point in the seed and give that time right back, but for thus far, it hasn't really hurt him.
Just some money on the tablet, so we'll take our chances going into the first available crystal dungeon. Checking the basement, checking the lobby, looking for that big key, which we find right away. Now, with a hookshot and that big key in hand, that'd be a perfect opportunity for DieselMartini, if he knows it, to show off Hera Pot.
Yes, which Hera Pot, for those of you which aren't familiar, is a ability to basically clip into a pot on the bottom floor and it clips you up pretty much most of the way up the tower. If you have Big Key already, it's basically just a straight time save. You can do it with bombs. Most people do it with boots, but you can do it with just bombs. If you don't have Big Key is when it becomes an interesting proposal, because then you're basically abandoning a chest.
Yeah, if that key is in the basement, you're committing to skipping the big chest.
Oh, and an unfortunate mirror there.
Yeah, you have that equipped after the first check in the basement, so you can get right back to the start, and without thinking about it, if you don't unequip it, it's just something you'll press, thinking you have the hammer or the hookshot, and voila, you're back at the start. So I've made that mistake more than a few times. I can see exactly how it happens.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Meanwhile, Andy's following up on the checks which DieselMartini already did. We didn't mention this when we saw it, but the floating island is just a red rupee. Both runners know. Oof, that is an unfortunate death there by DieselMartini.
Well, you got tough enemies up there. So on Green Mail, he's got to be very careful on that fourth floor.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I would probably, when he goes up here, maybe he'll pull out that blue cane.
Andy making his way in, not too far behind Diesel.
Yeah, and we'll see here. I think Andy does know Hera pot, so he might decide to show it off.
That Lionel really making Diesel run around here. Andy is going to do a Hera pot. There's a 2-stage setup. First you get the bomb in the correct pixel, then you have to position your character on another pixel perfect spot, use your hookshot, clip into that pot, drop down into the fairy room. You are now 1 floor above the big chest. So it is quite a time save. It saves maybe, 25, 30 seconds at minimum with the setup and getting up the 3rd floor.
Yeah, and especially in something like Randomizer, getting to skip those floors and even picking up the fairy on the way. You saw Andy was at 3 hearts, and oof, that looks like a Trine or a Helmasaur halfway through the wall.
Interesting sprite placement from the game. Randomizer can do some weird things here. Alright, knocking the mask off with the hammer. 17 hits. Pulling out the sword to give a little bit of an extra pixel placement for that hammer. This is a bit more challenging than a normal Helmasaur fight in pod because, while it doesn't look like he'll be charging, you do have that hole right in the middle of the floor. Oh, there's the charge. Ooh, Diesel. So Diesel took a death to Helmasaur while Andy takes him down for that first crystal and a blue boomerang at 31 minutes, almost exactly.
Yeah, and I was counting items there. There was a big 20 in the big chest, and there was the blue boomerang, so Andy knows the basement is useless, so we'll presumably not see him go down there. Instead, if I had to guess, he will probably go east to Spiral Cave.
And then it becomes a question of what's next, because just mentally checking things off on the map, I don't think there's too much left in the light world here. There's desert we have access to, but that could very well be boots locked.
There's desert, you can get the desert ledge, and you can also route in Agena. So basically you're getting at least 2 checks guaranteed, and possibly 3 or 4 depending on the item placement in desert.
Yeah, plus that green crystal. But there's the Titan's Midst in Spiral Cave, which opens up this seed wide open with access to the Dark World.
Still needs Moon Pearl, though.
You are correct. He does need that Moon Pearl. We also have the shovel, so there's one more item in the light world we can look at.
And very nice revenge fight there by DieselMartini. Shovel not paying off, just 300 rupees.
It's kind of an oxymoron statement, not paying off with 300 rupees.
Yeah, I thought about that after I said it, and then I was like, well, I guess it's still true because Andy's already spent his Zora money, so at this point, maybe you buy a couple potions, but that's pretty much your big thing.
Yeah, he's got not a whole lot to spend money on at this point. But here's the desert play we were just thinking about. So we've got Agena, Desert Ledge, maybe some checks in desert, possibly all the way to Land Molist if we are not boots locked.
Yeah, and I definitely like the play here to check Desert Ledge very first before you even walk into Agena, because and it pays off because there is the pearl. So with Mitts and Hammer and Pearl, basically the entire Dark World is open. So the only reason you need to do Aga 1 at this point is if that happens to be a crystal on pod that you need the bow for the Igor statue.
Alright, if this chest is anything other than a key, we are boots locked. So okay, that's a map. We're going to have either the small or the big key up on the torch. Andy confirming.
Yeah, and so while we've got a second here, while DieselMartini makes this check and Andy goes and picks up his pearl, just give a bit of an update. Since we're about 30 minutes in, this is the Week 3 Randomizer match between the long shots, represented by DieselMartini, and Pug Trio, represented by Andy. Both runners are very, very excellent, and Andy, of course, is well known within the community. Diesel is a bit of a newer runner, but is definitely developing skills pretty quickly. My name is Arusta. My co-commentator is Lumaga. Shoutouts to Tyler Salt, our tracker, who is also a member of the Long Shots. And you're watching here on SpeedGaming Prime. Definitely give our runners a follow as well.
Now Andy went to the back of Desert Palace and got the key off the pot. So it's called stealing a key, and it's an interesting play. Most of the times it doesn't quite work out. The way the logic works is it will never expect this. So the randomizer may not place anything back here, but Andy's taking a chance at it.
Yeah, and it is worth noting, since it's the big key up there, Andy's getting these 2 checks here, and then afterwards, ooh, a mushroom. That could mean something. But then afterwards, when he comes back, if he decides to come back for the green pendant and to clear the boss, he will need to still come back and get that big key off the torch.
Yeah, so that's an out-of-logic mushroom. So anything that we find on the mushroom or thereafter will be out of logic until we get boots.
Yeah, which Lunatic pointing out correctly in chat, since that mushroom is out of logic, you know that boots cannot be in Witch's Hut.
Alright, I believe that takes care of just about all of the light world for us, with not much on Agina. So here we are back on Death Mountain. Probably Dark Death Mountain would be a good guess here.
Yeah, Dark Death Mountain would make a lot of sense, because you get the 2 checks off Spooper Bunny, you get the knowledge of what's on Turtle Rock, if that happens to be a crystal. You get 4 checks from Hookshot Cave, and then you can also route in Spike Cave along the way, because with 10 hearts plus half magic and a blue and invincibility item. Red crystals on Swamp and Thieves Town, and the last pendant is on Misery Mire. So yes, we will need to know what Turtle Rock is, so this is going to pay off pretty well.
And if TR happens to be Quake, we could just open it and don't have to worry about it later. Can't go into it until we have a Cane of Samaria, though. Alright, 2 checks out of Super Bunny, quarter piece of heart, and 20 rupees. Bunch of red stuff, but nothing useful.
Yeah, and one thing to note, which Chad is discussing, is that pod is a crystal, so they will need to do it. So the interesting thing, and this is, I guess, a question maybe you can think about and we can discuss a little bit. Do you just put it off AGA 1 as long as you can, or do you really? How soon do you make that play for that bow?
Knowing that pod is a crystal, personally, I would probably go for it. And we have that mirror. You could go check out Pyramid pretty soon. Mirror over to AGA, get the bow, and then head straight to pod.
Oh, and flippers there in Hookshot Cave. That is a very nice item to have. While DieselMartini, it deals with a rough walk to the Bombos tablet here.
Yeah, Crystal Roller and a Chain Chomp, both waiting for him, preventing him from getting the Bombos tablet. Now, if he finds a bow before he gets up to, that way on in the Dark World, then of course there's no reason to ever do AGA.
Yeah, and I mean, since you need boots anyways, I mean, you definitely, even if you think you're going to do it at some point, you wait until you at least get boots for that. Because it's worth noting, with Desert being a pendant, they're not actually guaranteed to find boots.
All right, both the runners kind of making a little bit of a different play here, so we're going to get some checks on the the reverse part of the Smith chain, starting with K45, probably going to Stumpy, and then Race Game before headed to Village of Outcast. Andy going back into Hype Cave where Diesel already was, didn't find a whole lot but bombs. Diesel lucking out with the boots, as we were just talking about.
Yeah, and that's nice, and I mean, it's also good for Diesel to get those a little earlier, because that's definitely something. The longer you have boots before your opponent, it's not something you realize, but over time that really adds up. And the boots, to answer a question in chat, were at Stumpy.
I gotta say, I love this Swap Palace play, especially finding the flute in that first chest.
Diesel getting Tempered Sword, which is very nice. However, it is worth noting that while it's nice to have, it isn't a spot that you'd have to imagine Andy very well might check, because when he routes in his Village of Outcast checks.
All right, Andy actually making the play to left side swamp. Got to open this up, and then he will. Oh, he's flooding the key first.
So what he's playing off here is the diver down, yes. So you put the bomb there, you wait until it almost explodes, and as long as you get off that screen while the bomb explosion's still on screen, it will automatically flip the switch. And then what you do here, you can do it with Samaria or with bombs. Basically, you end up clipping into the ray. And there you go. Now you can pick up. Yep. For those of you who are out there, this is very new tech. It was just approved about a week ago. For those of you out there who are new to Randomizer or, newer runners, don't feel like tech like that is nearly as worrisome as it sounds. Like, it does save you a few seconds, but it will not be the difference in most races, like that short of a time save. So, like, don't let, as impressive as it looks, don't let that kind of thing put you off of trying Randomizer.
Yeah, actually a few new glitches which were approved in the past week. One of them in Ice Palace, one of them in Palace of Darkness. Maybe we'll get to see those. Well, there's an ice rod, so good call on going to left side swamp.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that you can only, the glitch there, the diver down, you can only do the very first time if you're doing left side swamp, because if you go to the back first, like some people often do, you use up that key, the key you already have, and then you have to get the one under the skull before you can do anything else.
Yeah, to what you're saying, though, about glitches, yeah, don't be intimidated because your routing and execution are much more important than being able to pull off, a situational glitch, right? A diver down, icebreaker. Those are things, sure, they're a bit of time savers, but your execution and routing overall is going to win you a race.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's even true here. Andy is going to set up diver down. You can set it up again here, and this will allow him to check those two chests more quickly, and it'll save doing it the vanilla way where you have to see that little cutscene of the water filling up, or draining, excuse me. To answer a question in chat, the new pod tech, which we might see depending on, since pod is a crystal, is basically the stairs in the arena, if you have the orange crystals up, which would normally block you, you can set up Samaria in a way that when you dash, you actually sort of teleport up the stairs and through those orange crystals. So it saves you a little bit of time over trying to flip the switch. It's like 10, 15 seconds at most time save, but it looks awesome.
It looks awesome, and again, it's situational, so you got to have the key layout maybe set up so you enter from that way. You got to have the Cane of Samaria, so it's cool to see, but always not entirely necessary. And a quick Moldorm kill in the back of Swamp Palace gets Andy the big key and a crystal.
Yeah, and one thing to note here, while Diesel is doing this, Diesel is going back to the backside first. This is a play which in Randomizer people sort of are divided on, because the boss is there right when you first get to the back. You don't have to pick it up or go to this back or attic at all. So a lot of times the route you'll see people take is go straight to the boss, check the boss. If you can kill it, you kill it. Then you come back for these chests if you feel like you need them.
Yeah, because if you find out that it's say a Trinex and you don't have the fire rod or the ice rod, in DieselMartini's case, then you may luck out and find it later in the dungeon. And well, here's a cold stair which needs a fire weapon anyway.
Yeah, and that's a good job catching himself there, because he was going to save and quit, but with Mir, you definitely want to keep doing these checks. However, if it was something where he didn't have mirror, dying on cold stare takes a surprisingly long time in the very first phase, because until you break that shield, you actually can't get damaged by the puffs. To answer a question in chat, boots are on Stumpy. Which Andy decided to do Swamp and some of these South Dark World checks, whereas DieselMartini, after doing Hike Cave, sort of routed his way up to Village of Outcasts and got Stumpy on the way.
Yeah, and the flute being in Swamp Palace, you kind of think that evens out a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, Andy is definitely going there right now because that's where the densest checks are, and there's at least one crystal you can get of Thieves Town, maybe two. Well, from Andy's perspective, at least one crystal you can get in Thieves Town. Of course, we know that it's a cold stare and you can't kill it yet.
Alright, in the back of Graveyard Ledge, just 50 rupees. Now, Diesel does not have the flippers. I don't quite recall where they were, but you know, that would have been a good time for him to route in, like maybe Catfish while he was on north side of Dark World. Where were the flippers?
They were in Hookshot Cave.
Okay, that's right. He has not gone up there.
Yes, Andy has checked all of Dark Death Mountain, and Diesel has not gone up that way at all. He's only checked the Light World.
Alright, Andy kicking off the Smith chain, while Diesel getting our first look of Skull Woods here. Two items here, both of which may indeed be fire locked, and we do not have a fire rod in hand.
And there is
there's one, a
Samaria.
really good.
Yes, a really good item, as you were going to say. And it's also, I think, for Diesel, if you're rooting for Diesel in this match, a very nice thing, because Andy knows he can't beat the boss, so it's possible, like he looks like right now, that he does not actually do Skullwoods right away.
Yeah, just a quick detour for him to activate his flute, coming back to finish out some of the Smith chain. So tempered sword down in hammer pegs, and we'll see if he bothers with the purple chest at this point. All right, one more chest in the back of Skull Woods, which is accessible. Other than that, we're fire locked. Alright, Andy coming up with a bunch of money, but no progression out of the lunchbox today. and we are fire locked in Skull Woods. So Andy's still got Village of Outcast and Thieves Town to go through. Diesel at this point, he's heading up to Dark Death Mountain, so we'll see a bit of these paths weaving in and out.
For those of you watching DieselMartini stream, you saw those blocks disappear. If you're not familiar with that glitch, it's a Japanese 1.0, which is what Rando is based on, exclusive glitch. Basically, if you use the mirror while a block is moving, the block disappears automatically. It is pretty much a free glitch, so if you're new to Randomizer and don't know how to do it, you can check the wiki and it'll tell you, and it's basically just push the block and spam Y.
Yeah, a lot of these glitches, actually, we saw the hammer peg done with a hammer dash is also, I think, exclusive to 1.0. I think in future versions, it was patched out so you couldn't use an item while dashing. Alright, just one chest away from Diesel's flippers. Andy making his way further into Thieves Town.
Yeah, and the one thing, if you're paying really close attention to Andy's screen, you saw a bunch of lag there in Thieves Town. In Randomizer in particular, the front of Thieves Town is infamous for that.
Oh, we're getting a spike cape flay. So, and actually Andy might have already done this if I wasn't quite paying attention on that at that moment. Now that we have the boots though, Andy did pick up a mushroom. And I don't think we've seen him turn it in, so that is now in logic. Because that mushroom was boots locked in Desert Palace.
I think he did pick it up. Oh, and Andy bombing the floor, which is one thing you don't need to actually do in Randomizer like this. The boss is already there. Even if it does happen to be blind, the boss is still already there.
Yeah, you just play so much Randomizer. That's muscle memory showing right there. You're always going to do that in a normal seed. Randomizer being the exception here, so just kind of happens.
Yeah, definitely, and I mean it's definitely something over the course of this week we've seen a bunch of runners do. It's definitely not a unique thing. You just get so used to doing it, like you said.
So I was trying to think of what we actually might need for the rest of the seed, and maybe not entirely possible with the Randomizer. We don't exactly know what bosses will hit, but if I look at it now, we'll need Fire Rod to get through Skull Woods. If we get a Fire Rod, of course, Cold Stare is beatable. Bombos will also do that for us. And we need the Bombos Medallion, actually, to get into Turtle Rock. But is that about it? Am I missing something?
Nope, it's It's basically, it's Fire Rod and Bombos at this point, and then that bow, either the Aga bow or a different bow because you need it for pod.
Okay, so yes, we need the bow for sure because we got to get that Igor statue square in the eye. But yeah, we need Fire Rod and Bombos to finish those other 2 dungeons. This Cane of Samaria here in the pinball room, Skull Woods, the one of 2 items which we've seen. I believe the other one is going to be back either on Moth or in the bridge by Moth.
Yes, because right now they don't have either. They don't have the map, so there is still 1 item in the back. Okay, good. And DieselMartini also doing left side swamp, which is very good because if he hadn't, that would be a lot of trouble for him.
Now we say that, but we don't actually know if there's a Trinex around. We know we're going to see every boss at least once, and then 3 random bosses will show up twice. But we don't know if Trinex is even going to be in a dungeon we're going to need to complete.
Yeah, at this point, since we've already seen the Eastern Palace, Trinex could be in Desert Palace, Mire, or Ice Armos, and you wouldn't need to fight him, potentially. Otherwise, yes. The odds are... And a ped check, just a little piece of love today.
So that's good news if Trinex is down below and we didn't get that ice rod, but Ped is dead. Rip Ped.
Yeah, and if you're... that's actually a pretty good thing subtly for DieselMartini because Andy cleared Eastern while Diesel did not. So that's a thing that if Ped was required would have been a huge extra advantage for Andy. Yeah, and so just to, since I'm seeing some questions in chat, the goal this week is it's open Randomizer, which, as you can see, means there's enemies and bosses in all sorts of unique places, and defeat Ganon, so they have to gather all 7 crystals, and then climb Ganon's tower, kill Aga 2, and then go stick the pig. From what we know thus far, the pendants are Eastern, Desert, and Misery Mire, so those are the ones that they may not necessarily need to clear to beat the seed. All the other dungeons have to be gone through and fully beaten. And so for the overall standings, currently the long... Oof, that is a rough death by DieselMartini.
Yeah, that's all the way in the back.
In this spot, yeah, it's all the way in the back. The overall standings, the long shots are 1-3, so they have 3 points in the league, while Pug Trio is 3-1, so they have 9 points in the league. I believe the leader in their division is currently 2 Pearl, 2 Furious, who is 5-1 and thus has 15 points, but has completed all their matches for for this week. So if Andy wins today and then Pug Trio wins again, they would end up tied at the end of the week.
Yeah, this is the first of two matches between Long Shots and Pug Trio. The second is going to happen on Saturday at 8:10. Looks like Zelda Fan 18657 versus Futon. So that'll wrap up their week 3. So there's our In Logic, now Big 20 on the Mushroom Potion Shop. Here's a Catfish I've been curious about since we saw Diesel do part of North Dark World and Light World.
Oh, and that is big, because Bombos is hard required, because we need to get into Turtle Rock. It is also worth noting in Randomizer like this, medallions have a lot more value just in terms of killing enemies during the Ganon's Tower climb and potentially a few rooms if they have to go to Mire 2 in particular. Those medallions can be a huge time savings rather than trying to beat them up just by hand.
Yeah, it was in a normal 7, but and the value is much higher just because you can clear a room. And it looked like that was Bamos as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was. Which is worth noting that, as Mukau points out in chat, now that you have Bombos, you can also get the crystal off Cold Stare for Thieves Town. Which may not seem like a whole lot, but not only is it a clearable crystal, it would be the second red crystal, so it would also lead directly to 2 items for the Pyramid Fairy.
And a nice gold sword in the checkerboard cave. So with that Bamos in hand, we're going to flute back to 3. Very possible we get that cold stare fight right away.
And the thieves that you're seeing in this flag setting are killable. There are other Randomizer settings where the thieves are not killable, like similar to the vanilla game where they just sort of you just knock them back. But these settings are at least friendly in that way. Thieves under these settings also do not do damage if they hit you; they just knock your items back. There are also randomized settings if you really want to be mean, which randomize the damage, and in those cases, you can have unkillable thieves who also hurt you. And that's just super mean.
Yeah, you can make some evil seeds. Not to mention, Randomizer has some additional settings like Chaos Boss Shuffle, whereas we're in full boss shuffle in these seeds, you can get every boss once, a few bosses twice. You could wind up with 13 cold stares or trinexes. So there's our second red crystal, cold stare in Thieves Town. Andy's third crystal overall.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that with that Bombos, you can now get into Ice Palace, which is 3 checks as well.
So the longer they go, and we're not finding a bow, we're kind of seeing that AGA 1 might actually be a requirement to get that bow off a lumberjack.
Absolutely, but I mean, Andy's play here, of course, makes a lot of sense to do Pyramid Fairy, and you'd have to guess he's going to basically last location that bow, because the amount of time AGA 1 takes, especially in Randomizer, where they've got a bunch of equipment, so it wouldn't necessarily be dangerous, but it might take forever to kill some stuff or get yourself up there. So, I mean, at that point, I would even say you might even just go into pod bowless and hope you find it in those first few checks before you even touch the Enemizer, or excuse me, the Enemizer AGA 1.
All right, a couple of new checks. Andy with the pyramid fairy checks. Arrows and bombs. So no dice there. But DieselMartini picked up that big key off the torch for the small key. We know that the other side doesn't have much. However, he does have access to finish it off if he so chooses.
And it looks like Andy is making that AGA play. Maybe just figuring, get the bow, and then that's one less. Then at least you know you can pretty much clear pod, unless it's Trinex, and that more than justifies doing, you know, all the stuff and rather than trying to double dip it.
Yeah, you're here. Might as well just get it over with, because there's really no guarantee you'll find it anywhere else. It could be in Ganon's tower for all we know.
Or, you know, it could be on Helmasaur, who is still bow locked.
And Diesel actually going for the boss of Desert Palace, who normally is Landmalus, but not today. Possibly not today. Got a green crystal, so it makes it a little bit more enticing. And if there's something on that green crystal or Landmalus, like Fire Rod, you know, that puts Diesel right back in this.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that I do not believe Diesel has done a pedestal check, because I think he got bow afterwards. So he is not aware that Pet is completely dead.
Yeah, he's not gone up to do the pedestal check. Andy's the only one who's checked it, but gave us the information. It's just a little piece of love.
And nice dodging of the Wallmaster there. That is definitely one of the rudest random things that you see in Enemizer is Wallmasters coming from anywhere. The absolute worst place is some places in Ganon's tower where you can have one enemy knock you back into another Wallmaster and there's nothing you can do. Or an Ice Rod where you're, or excuse me, Ice Palace where you're picking up a big, one of the big ones and the big rock, and the time it takes you to pick it up, he comes down and just grabs you, and there's nothing whatsoever you can do.
That first case you mentioned, we saw this week. So, yeah, the Wallmasters are very, very cruel in Enemizer because they only appear in very select spots in the vanilla game, but they seem to appear a disproportionate amount of times in Enemizer, and always when you least want them there. Alright, so we do have that green crystal. Andy on his AGA fight. Couple more hits will send him to the Dark World and be able to get the bow off a Lumberjack.
And fantasy owners everywhere happy that Andy, for all that dashing, just kept cutting it off before actually bonking and not ruining our points.
Well, he had to make up for it by getting the gold sword, which would award no points for a gold sword boss kill, so thankfully the bonks are managed.
And so after Andy gets this bow, basically all he's going to be looking for is that Fire Rod for Skull Woods, and then if he finds a Trinex somewhere.
I think this is Diesel's first trip up in this area. Gonna check Waterfall first, but I don't think we've seen Diesel go get Zora either.
Yeah, and this is actually really bad for what we're seeing, at least right now from Andy's side. This is really bad for DieselMartini because coming up here in the light world means he's basically going to last location Catfish because he's going to have no reason to come up here. And we know Catfish is Bombos, which is required for Turtle Rock.
All right, and Andy headed to the Dark World near pod, so we're going to finally get that pod play. Looking for a fire rod, but with that bow in hand, he can get all the way to the boss and clear it up.
And that thief
Diesel
was determined to steal from Diesel.
Yeah, but did evade him with the splash delete there. Very nicely done. It's another recently approved glitch. Recently, maybe in the past, 5-6 months, but something we hadn't seen before last year.
Yeah, and that's something which you often see to get through the item off Zora ledge there without flippers. It is something that, there are a lot of different ways to do it. If you're interested in learning them, I would honestly just say pull up the wiki page, maybe learn a couple of the most common ones, and just know what items are possible. And then, because you can look at stuff even during the race, it honestly might be faster to just, figure out what the options are and figure it out mid-race. Which, yes, in this case, he does have flippers, but...
Oh, Andy. A hover and a rail clip. And a fire rod. So that puts Andy in go mode at 1 hour, 16 minutes. So,
yeah, and right now, Diesel needs to go up to Catfish for the Bombos medallion, needs to go into Pod for the fire rod, and then also needs to go get that bow off Lumberjack.
Alright, Diesel just looking around for the big key, finds it in the pod basement. And now on to the boss of Paths of Darkness.
And to clarify, in these particular settings, Fire Rod is not bow locked, because in a normal seed, you would be correct that you need to have bow to get past the red Igors. However, in Randomizer, those red Igors don't exist. And they can't be they can exist anywhere, but they can't exist in rooms where you either need to kill them to get a key or to open a door. So like the room Andy's in now would normally have a red Igor in it. Where you do need the bow is what you're going to see in about 5 seconds here. Meanwhile, on Diesel's side, looks like he's going to make that same play. He's got the mirror out, looks like he's going to make that same play up to Aga 1.
Yeah, this will net him his bow. But you're right, still has to go to Catfish, get the bombos to get into Turtle Rock, and then we'll have to make the pod play for the fire rod. While Andy getting to one of the last rooms in the basement. Normally has all the turtles, but today just pulling out the Bombos medallion and destroying most of these enemies.
Yeah,
or
which
all
is
of them for that
definitely a
matter.
smart call in this point, because rather than trying to chase them around, you know, there are a lot of 6 enemies in that room. Just the time you eat on the bombos more than makes up for it.
Yeah, especially those 2 red jellies, which you kind of have to kill 3 if you're going to kill 1. The big one splits into 2, and then you got to kill the 2. So definitely a huge time save. All right, and Helmasaur, I think, is the first boss here, which we've seen twice. We saw one at the top of Tower of Hera, and another one here in his home location in Palace of Darkness. So 2 more bosses we could see one more time if we've already seen them.
Correct, that is the first time, and it's worth noting in these settings you can only have a boss doubled up, not tripled up, so we will not see another Helmasaur.
Alright, there's a flute to aid. Here comes the Ice Palace. Check. Both Fire Rod and Bombos. It's got access either way. With that Canis Samaria, we are set up at least for an Icebreaker play. We'll see if Andy wants to pull it out. I don't know if it's a huge time save in Go mode versus non-Go mode or what. I'm not all that familiar with it, but I'm sure Andy's practiced it more than I have.
Basically, Icebreaker, if you can get it pretty quickly, is a time save no matter how you're doing the dungeon. The only time it's not a huge time save is if you've got a very specific scenario where you're coming in here without hammer and you don't find a small key in the first couple chests, because then you can soft lock yourself. But it does look like Andy's passing it up. Probably just going to do the oh nope, getting the crystal switch.
Yeah, if you're gonna Go mode it, I do know that you have to hit the crystal switch because you're gonna wind up on the right side of those blocks, and you're gonna need those pegs down if you want to go through to cold steer quickly. All right, so he is going to have to clip 1 pixel into that wall, set a Samaria block down, and voila, he's through.
Yeah, and I know we've said this about a bunch of other glitches, but again, that's something that, you know, it's actually a bigger time save than the others, but it's also a lot less difficult than you might think it is. The nice thing as well is that once you can do it, you set it down, and then you don't actually have to, you can retry as much as you want once you set that first Samaria block. So, you know, even if you don't get it first try, you can screw it up quite a few times before it stops being a time save.
I think Andy was hoping to get a key out of this chest in the spike room, but had to get the free key underneath the big rock 1 floor below. And Diesel picking up his bow, able to finish out Pod where we know the Fire Rod is.
Yeah, and Diesel's going to go straight to Pod, which makes a lot of sense. Hopefully, right afterwards, Diesel will go up to Catfish.
Yeah, Catfish being where that Bombos medallion is, the Turtle Rock access. Otherwise, going to be searching high and low for it. And Mothula, without his conveyor floor and without the spikes moving around, bit of a joke. Andy takes him down, no problem, picks up his next crystal.
Yeah, and one subtle thing here is that DieselMartini's run through Pod is probably going to take a little longer than Andy's, because Diesel is, knowing that he still needs Fire Rod, going to check more chests than a few more chests than Andy did.
Alright, nothing left to check in Skull Woods. Straight to the back with this fire rod. Andy's going to take on the boss of Skull Woods in just a moment. What you were saying about Diesel having to pick up a few more chests, he's also got to do a bit more routing here because Andy pulled out the boots and hovered and rail clipped over to the fire rod chest, whereas DieselMartini is taking the normal way you would take it. Yes, actually, chat bringing this up is that there are some bosses that can't be in certain rooms, so Trinex actually shouldn't be allowed in here. Mothula is perfectly acceptable in here, but there are some bosses, because of the room geometry, won't be able to be in certain rooms. For example, you'd never find Armos up in Tower of Hera or in Moldorm 2. So there's just certain rules like that.
Yeah, for here, the big thing was just that it could not be a Trinex. Anything else actually can be in Mothula's arena. Including, of course, Mothula.
Yeah, you don't say. So one more dungeon, Turtle Rock on the top of Death Mountain, Dark Death Mountain. Facing one final boss before we head into Ganon's Tower. And it's going to be a short trip from TR to GT. So start thinking about where your guess is on where the big key might be in Ganon's Tower. No guesses yet, wait till we get that 7th crystal.
While Andy opens up TR here, just as a update for those of you who joined late, the big difference in this race is Diesel has taken some very unfortunate deaths. He had an unfortunate mirror in Tower, like near the top of Tower of Hera, took 2 unfortunate deaths in Tower of Hera, and then another death elsewhere, and that's really the biggest difference here. Diesel is, other than that, played and routed pretty well. It's just that's the kind of thing you unfortunately can't get away with when you're facing a top tier runner like Andy.
Yeah, the other part of this is that Diesel is still on the hunt for the Bombos medallion to get to Turtle Rock, which we know is at Catfish, and he's isolated it pretty far.
Yeah, if you're rooting for Diesel in this match, or just rooting for the match to get closer, you have to hope that Diesel does it right after this, because otherwise there's just no way. Because this is your last chance where you're anywhere close.
Nice quick hook shot. So while Andy's going through the rest of Turtle Rock, and we're going to see Diesel take on our Vanilla Helmasaur, let's just do a quick rundown of what we can expect in the rest of this. So we're in week 3 of League. This is near the halfway point. Our Randomizer week is going to wrap up on Sunday. After that, we're going to have Mystery. So no one's going to know. We're going to have to figure out what the settings of the seed are as we play. Really looking forward to that. There's a lot of interesting settings that could come up. Week 5 after that is going to be Cross Keys. So it's Entrance Randomizer and Key Sanity combined. That's always an interesting one to see. Kind of mind warp for the logic sometimes. And weeks 6 and 7 are going to be, co-op races. Week 6 being a spoiler pilot race. One player will do the running, one player will do the piloting, having the spoiler log and telling the runner where to go. Week 7, you're going to have 2 runners from each team face off, and you'll have a co-op all dungeons info share. The runners will be able to communicate with each other while they're playing and try and optimize their routing between the two of them. So lots of rando to come. We're at the halfway point. This has been a blast so far. Tune in for all of those. Alright, and a nice Helmosaur fight from DieselMartini to pick up another crystal. At this point, send him your thoughts and prayers and hopes and dreams, and send him on his way to Catfish to pick up that Vamos medallion for Turtle Rock.
And oof, that is definitely not great.
Yeah, that's not the way to Catfish. Really considering where to go too. But with the Fire Rod, Skullwoods does seem like a fair check for him from his perspective.
Especially since he has not done Thieves Town yet, so he can basically get 2 crystals at the same time, and Thieves Town is a red crystal, so he even gets 2 items from that.
There's our other male on Laser Bridge. So one on the boss of Desert Palace, one on Laser Bridge. Looks like we're going to finish out with blue male. Alright, one final boss here in the dungeons before we head on to Ganon's Tower. Maybe try next, maybe somebody else. Empty
It
room
is
should be
Landmos.
landless. Yeah.
Yep.
Alright, no problem with the Fire Rod. Takes him down quickly, gets his 7th crystal, and you know what that means. Get your guesses in chat. Pick a number 1 through 22. Integers, whole numbers only. No pi, no e, nothing imaginary. But we're going to figure out, take a guess, where that big key is in the basement of Ganon's Tower. Any thoughts, Arista?
I went with lucky number 7, which in the standard routing where you do Hope Room first would put it at the very end of the Skeleton Stalfos room, or if you do full right, then it ends up being on Bob's Torch if those first 6 don't pay off.
Yeah, I've been going for 9 lately, so maybe slightly after the DM room in a normal route, or within the DM room if you do something like right side first. So nothing too hard, nothing too easy. Alright, chest 1 and 2, just the medallion and a key. Torch is just a small key for number 3.
Meanwhile, DieselMartini taking the opportunity to mirror and check Ped, which makes a lot of sense. especially if you're going to do a little bit of meta gaming when you're an hour 34 in and you haven't seen, you're facing a runner who you know is fantastic like Andy, and you haven't seen a dot done. Maybe you're thinking, ooh, there's got to be something unique here. But it's just a little bit of love, like we know.
Yeah, at this point, it could have very well have been on the pedestal. We knew it was not. We saw the DM room, which was chests 4 through 7. No dice on that big key yet.
That is a very nice spot for that fire bar there.
Well, with those
Andy
silvers,
does get silvers.
Yeah, with those silvers, we know this was an AGA required seed. Chest number 9 coming up just after the warp. Nice big heart. -1 point for the fantasy owners.
Oof, and DieselMartini getting hit by one of those wall masters. Randomizer being Randomizer. Fortunately, it wasn't that far into Thieves Town, and Thieves Town's a pretty quick dungeon to get back to where he was.
No, we were saying how rude those wall masters can be, but as he was getting picked up, we were getting the big key out of chest number 10. Ranger of Void guessed number 10 and got on our leaderboard with 39 points. Congratulations. Diesel doing everything he can, dungeon-wise, finishing out Skullwoods, finishing out Ice Palace, trying to look for that Bombos tablet, stored away in the belly of the Catfish.
Yeah, and one interesting thing here, if you're noting, these past two rooms have had the same enemy, or past few rooms have had the same enemies. The way Ganon's tower works is that the enemies randomized within the super tile are the same, and a lot of these rooms are actually in the same super tile, so that's why you can see rooms where you see, oh, why is everything the same?
Yeah, kind of a blessing and a curse in Randomizer, because you could wind up with an easy setup and have a few fairly easy rooms. You could wind up with a hellish setup and really have a gauntlet.
And there's a nice graphical glitch there, which if you wonder why Andy pulled out the ice rod before even entering the room, because he saw that little graphical glitch.
Yep, one of those interesting, weird things about Randomizer. Gonna have to be a little careful. He's got 2 hearts. A couple hits with that butter sword will take care of Trinex. Not gonna take the chance though. I mean, Trinex is one thing, but Trinex plus a shooter, that shooter really throws you off.
Yeah, and Trinex leaving his legs in the walls there just in case, and his shell here.
In these rooms, you'd normally see a real quick kill with the Canis and Maria, but Randomizer doesn't allow us to do that. Still satisfying nonetheless. Whoa, lots of fire bars. Diesel mirroring back to the light world. Further and further away from Catfish. Probably the last good opportunity he had to route that in before really scrounging for it later. Meanwhile, Andy, near the end of the gauntlet, about to head to the Moldorm 2 room, where again there's only a certain number of bosses who can be there. We know that things like Armos cannot, but Vitreous can. And the swag giveth and the swag taketh away. Attempted a hover, fell down. Gonna go for it one more time. Makes off with that hover, skipping the Vitreous fight, and on his way to Agate 2.
Meanwhile, DieselMartini going through Ice Palace and going to full clear that. Again, like, if you're not going to do Catfish, which is what we know the play is in this seed, like, right here, going to a clearable crystal with 3 items does make sense from Diesel's perspective here.
Nice, quick, Agate 2. Alright, so Andy, into Ganon with the Butter Sword, with the Silver Arrows, and Half Magic. Just a few moments, we'll be done with Phase 1, he'll be on to Phase 2 in no time with that firepower. Dash pokes are a good strategy here. You don't get knocked away from a sword swing. But on to Phase 3. Ganon does have to hold still before Andy can hit him. Not really cooperating.
However, it is worth noting that at least the first time, this pattern is the same for all runners. So if this race was closer and, you know, Diesel was on this fight at the same time, having all those would not put Andy behind, because the other runner would have to deal with those exact same number teleports.
There's our quick triple. One more. Gets that last silver arrow. Get your GGs in chat for Andy, who's about to cross the final bridge into the Triforce room. And Andy takes this game with an official SRL time of 1 hour, 43 minutes, and 12 seconds. GG.
Meanwhile, DieselMartini is going through Ice Palace, gonna end up full clearing Ice Palace here, because still looking for that bomb boat.
See if we can get Andy in here for an interview real quick. Kind of wrap up this seed for him.
And we are currently joined by Andy. GG's, Andy. Well played.
Hey, GG's.
So first up, general thoughts. What did you think about the seed, the way you played, how the Randomizer was treating you today, etc.?
This is probably like the best layout I could have hoped for. Mid's hammer and mirror all before Moon Pearl, and then Boots like super early first Dark World check just meant I could check literally everything in a big circle. And then, that gave me everything except for fire rod and bow on lumberjack. And then fire rod and pod. Everything was just like super straightforward in my head the whole way. It was really nice.
Actually, on that bow, we were kind of wondering how long it would be before you decided to bite the bullet and go to Aga 1, or if you'd be clearing more dungeons trying to find the second bow first.
Yeah, that was in my head for the whole loop, and then I found Smaria and Skullwoods, which left me with just Bombos, bow, and fire rod. And then once Bombos was at Catfish, there was no reason to not do Aghanim at that point. I was like trying to math out, if I go into pod to try and find a bow or the fire rod or something, how much time would I lose having to double dip pod compared to like how much time it takes to do Aghanim and full clear ice potentially compared to go moding ice. So I figured it would come out at the very least even, unless bow and fire rod were both in pod. So
yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the biggest difference when you rewatch this between you and DieselMartini, Diesel played really well, but he took a bunch of unfortunate deaths, especially in Tower of Hera was pretty mean to him, and that really made a big difference in this seed, I think.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of Henoxes early, that's for sure. There were a bunch of Lionels towards the end, but the Butter Sword made them pretty easy to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. And how much, since you saw the Ice Rod in Swamp, what was your thinking about doing left side Swamp, like right when you first went in? Were you just still thinking there were a bunch of items and didn't want to leave any there? Or?
So my general rule of thumb is if I get some sort of dungeon item in the first couple checks before big chest, I'll do left side, just because there's a guaranteed item over there. Even more so now with all the new tricks that are allowed in Rando, it just makes left side even that much faster. And it's really fun to do anyways, so I don't mind doing left side first at all anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense, and we definitely in chat and commentary we appreciated you showing off all the new glitches.
Yeah, the left side Holy Diver is super cool too, because you do like the delayed switch trigger, and then you just like jump out of the water and jump right back into the water once you get the key. You also can't ever flood that small key anymore, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody's made that mistake at least once.
And now there's a recovery for it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on stream, looks like DieselMartini is going to somewhere in pod. Not really sure why. I thought Diesel had cleaned that out.
I don't know if he did Dark Maze in the big chest.
Because Diesel, unlike you, Andy, Diesel hadn't routed in Catfish as part of any of his checks, so he's been on a Bombos hunt for probably good 10-15 minutes here.
Yeah, it's in a rough spot, especially like that was the if I ended up doing Aghanim early and going to pod, getting the fire rod, who knows when I do Catfish at that point. At the very least, Myers also Bombo, so he's not doing that. But
oh, it was Hellway he didn't get to. So Andy, any thoughts about League coming up? We were mentioning it that next week is Mystery. This week you still have your team has one more match. I think Futon is playing. Any thoughts on that or Mystery?
Yeah, Futon's match is tomorrow night, I believe. He's looking forward to. I mean, Randomizer. You never know what's gonna happen. It's the fun thing about it. It kind of breaks the muscle memory mold a little bit. Mysteries next week. I don't think I'm playing next week. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah,
Anything
just to.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to play off of that, since you mentioned the next match between the Long Shots and Pug Trio, which will be Zelda Fan versus Futon, is actually happening Saturday night at about 8:10. Right now, it's still being decided whether or not that'll be streamed and, all that getting set up. So if you're interested in following that match, definitely keep track of the ALTTPR League website, where that and all the other matches will, of course, be mentioned in detail for everybody.
Is there any particular week in the future you're looking forward to? There's Cross Keys, Co-op Spoiler, and Co-op All Dungeon Info Share that would be in 5, 6, and 7.
All of those weeks I'm super excited for. Just the co-op spoiler, and then just the co-op in general, or both, or both the spoiler is going to be super fun. And then Cross Keys is always a blast.
Now, one other thing, and then maybe we can let you go if you want to go after the credits. Can we talk about this Lake Hylia division? So Pug Trio, with this win, is now in a tie for second with the Immortals. 3 points behind, 2 Pearl, 2 Furious. This is kind of a stacked division. I think it's probably one of the most challenging divisions in all of the league. What are your thoughts on all of your opponents you've been facing so far?
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty stacked division. We played 2 of the big hitters in the first 2 weeks, and ended up going 3-1. And then we play the other 2 big hitters, I think, week 6 and 7. So, you never know what can happen when anybody can take a match off of anybody. So we're just hoping to be in as good a situation as possible going into the last 2 weeks.
All right. Well, you're welcome to stick around. I don't know if I have any more questions. Or Rusta, did you have anything else for Andy?
No, just again, GG's and well played, and definitely everybody give these runners a follow. As we know, Andy is one of the well-known players in Randomizer, has been around for the community for quite a while. DieselMartini is a newer runner in the community, but as you've seen in the seed, outside of a few unfortunate deaths, is definitely developing his skills quickly, definitely worth following. So please give our runners a follow. Thank you everybody for watching. We're going to, of course, keep watching out, but that's all I've got for the interview, at least.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for commentating. Thanks for restreaming, Mr. Restreamer. I appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys next time.
All right. So DieselMartini, now that he's cleared out everything else he can, last locationing that Bombos medallion on Catfish. Doesn't feel good, but what does feel good is that there's no forfeit. He's still continuing. Still gonna go. Just letting it out, just venting a little bit with those rage slashes.
Someone in chat mentioning here comes the forfeit. I really don't think it's happening at this point. At this point, of course, they're both in the SRL room, so Diesel has almost certainly already seen that Andy's finished. If you were going to forfeit, you would have done it a while ago. I think at this point, Diesel is committed to just playing it out, which, there's no shade on anybody who chooses to forfeit, but there's also a lot of respect for, hey, I'm finishing this for good or for bad.
Now, did Diesel ever choose himself in a fantasy league and he just doesn't want to take the 0 for the week?
It's possible. For those of you who aren't familiar with what we're talking about, there is a Link to the Past Randomizer Fantasy League that's going on. There's a bunch of different leagues. Basically, people sort of set up their own. This is the first time we've done it in this season 2, so it's working pretty well thus far. I think everybody seems to be having fun with it. I'm actually in 2 leagues myself, and both Lumaga and I are a couple of the volunteers who are helping run the fantasy part of it behind the scenes. But everybody seems to be liking it. Essentially, what you get is there's points for winning, which is the biggest points because we want to. Essentially, the goal is to not really change the way people play. Bonks, you get points off if you bonk. You get points off of deaths, and then you get points for, equipment, all that. Basically, the better your execution, like fewer bottles, fewer hearts, worse swords, silverless Ganon, etc., are all worth points.
Yeah, so a lot of the good people in the league and the randomizer community had put together kind of a base set of rules, and then there's a few kind of house rules for each of the leagues that's been set up. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun drafting, the players. So I'm looking forward to see what we can do as season 3 starts sometime in the future.
Yeah, and if any of you out there are in fantasy leagues and you have some opinions on how to make it better for next season, or things that you did in your local leagues that you thought would be good rules to do it, contact myself. Like I mentioned, myself and Lumaga are both a couple of the volunteers who are helping with that. Sir Link-A-Lot is also sort of leading it up as well. Or there's a League Fantasy on the ALTTPR League Discord. You can definitely toss it out in there. We're always looking for, ideas for next season or things that we can do to improve.
Yeah, this is almost a little bit personal for Diesel at this point. I'm glad he's not just giving up and calling it a day. He's finishing out the seed strong. But definitely, you saw his frustration getting that Bombos off a Catfish in, it's so late.
Yeah, but as one of his teammates, Tyler Salt, pointed out, and a couple other people pointed out in chat, when you're playing a player and you're at a bit of a disadvantage by raw execution, sometimes you have to make gambles, because, if you don't make a gamble and just play the exact same route, someone with better execution is going to beat you. So, something like skipping Catfish, which is a gamble, but if there'd been nothing there, it could have saved him quite a bit of time. So,
yeah, you kind of know who you're going up against with Andy, so makes perfect sense to try some of these gambles and strategies that you might not normally do, in a one-on-one or like in a weekly race. Oh no, he didn't kill the Pokey. He missed a key. Marissa, do you have any thoughts on Randomizer just kind of as a concept? I don't know if you've played much of it.
I have. I'm not in the league this year, I'm not in the league this season, because I did not plan on having a ton of time before, started working from home. But I have played a lot of Randomizer, and I always find it pretty interesting. It's definitely fun. One thing that I would definitely recommend if anybody hasn't played it, I mean, definitely give yourself a chance and play it. And I would also, maybe not the first seed you play, but later on, even try some of the more interesting settings like, the Chaos Boss Shuffle or the Shuffled Enemy Damage, because it definitely makes things just completely different from what you'd normally see. More difficult, but more interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to make this game, just a bit more interesting, and people are coming up with new things all the time. Randomizer adds just enough of a twist for it to be, a new kind of game, right? I mean, both in terms of what's your execution going to be, but also with the bosses being shuffled. You don't know if you're going to ever, if you're going to need the fire rod for, 3 of your first available bosses, right? Maybe you get 2 cold stares in the Trinex, and then you're stuck trying to find something else. So, I mean, I like it as a concept. I've played a couple of Randomizers, and maybe I just got stuck with some bad seeds, but I don't know if I've ever actually finished an Randomizer. Although it's been a while, just kind of a newer runner at the time, and just looking for something neat to do. And it is neat. It's just, maybe wasn't for me at the time.
Yeah, definitely. Meanwhile, DieselMartini picking up the key and red mail. If I remember right, well, Diesel does have powder, so I'll probably see if there's an anti-fairy in here, try to powder that. Otherwise, he does have, I believe, at least 1 potion, if not more, so probably use one as soon as he gets in this room.
Yeah, I think he's got a potion. So there, he's got a blue and a red. He'll be set for this.
And a very nice land mouse fight there.
Seventh Crystal on his way to the tower. We know that the GT is... Where did we put that? We put that in the rando room, number 10. So as long as he goes left, he'll be set.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that with the location being in rando room, Diesel will be getting silver, since those were in what's normally the fire bar room that you pass on the way there. So he will get silvers and make his Ganon fight with butter, red mail, and silvers, and a blue potion. Very straightforward.
Now, you mentioned at the top of the broadcast here, DieselMartini was part of the Go Mode podcast mentor tournament this past summer. I've noticed that a lot of runners from that tournament who were relatively new at the time have really kind of, gotten rid of any inhibitions in racing and joining these tournaments, and, even taking on somebody like Andy in a league setting. So, I mean, it's great to see the community growing, people expanding, and, just the interest staying alive. You could think that the game would be stale, but I think there's enough interest in a great community where it's as stronger than it ever has been.
Yeah, definitely. And I would also say, for those of you who aren't, into running the game yourself or haven't yet, It's a lot easier to learn than it looks like. Your first seed will take you some time, but the one thing that I would say about this community, more than almost any other video game community I've been a part of or things like that, is that it is very, very friendly to newbies. There's all sorts of resources there, and you know, even a race like this, like, you get to learn from playing a strong player, and people are usually very friendly. You see there are still plenty of people in chat rooting for DieselMartini, even though the race has been over for what's now over 20 minutes. So
Alright, one more chest, and he should get the big key, provided he gets the one on the bottom left first. Alright, picked up his silvers along the way, now up to the gauntlet. I had to check, make sure he had a small key. The only thing that could have kind of gone south for him at this point is not having a small key on the climb.
yeah, but there was one on Bob's torch, in addition to the one that you find under the skull. So, however, that is definitely something that has tripped up many a runner. Especially if you find the big key and hope room, you just immediately mirror and start climbing, forgetting that you need to pick up that other small key under the pot.
You mentioned earlier about Randomizer sometimes creating lag, and while it didn't happen in that room, that room DieselMartini was just in is an example of why. So normally that room has 2 BMOs, which you can't kill, and those BMOs turned into enemies. So you had to kill 4 enemies rather than the 2 mimics that would be in there. Now, in a room where there's more stationary enemies, they're going to turn into mobile enemies and sprites, and that just is what causes that lag. I was wondering what that final enemy was, but it was a pot, enemy under a pot there.
Yeah, and also one thing which we haven't pointed out because it was never particularly relevant, but if you saw in that room after DieselMartini hookshotted the, I don't even know what they're called, the little Goomba-looking, or Gumby-looking guys, and then killed it with a sword, that is called the stun prize, which is the same for every single enemy in the seed that can be killed with hookshot and then a weapon. And it's often good to check that, especially if you're a newer runner. In this case, it was a heart, which might have been nice to know. In some cases, you can get something like magic or bombs or fairies, which are very, very helpful and can sometimes really save you if you're struggling.
Yeah, find that stun prize pretty early with a boomerang or a hookshot. And just take note, because if it's valuable, yeah, you could use it much later in the seed. Alright, the one and only time we'll see Trinex in this seed, up in the Ganon's Tower Landmillis 2 room.
And I think the only boss we never saw... Did we see every boss? I think we might have.
I don't think we saw Armos.
Okay, yeah, we didn't... Thought there was... Yeah. So that means Armos was either in Misery Mire or Vanilla Armos 2.
And actually, I know that we saw 2 Helmosaurs. Did we have another duplicate that we saw? Mothula, right?
Yes, 2 Mothulas.
Alright, that last potion. Kind of a brazen move there. If he was any quicker, he may have triggered a very unfortunate glitch.
Yes, there is a glitch in that room of the tower when you're going up those stairs. If you go up the stairs on the exact same frame that the door behind all those torches go out and the door behind you closes, you completely despawn all the sprites in the tower, and you basically have to mirror out and start over. As Chad is pointing out, yeah, pretty much everybody will do it at least once, and then only once.
Yeah, you never make that mistake twice.
No, because I mean, it's a solid, basically you have to start over the entire climb, so it is a solid 5-minute loss, and that's the kind of thing that turns a win into a loss, and even a race where you were leading by a decent bit.
And a bit of difficulty on the Aga 2 fight, both in terms of setup and what gets reflected and ricocheted, but takes him down now on his Ganon fight. So he should be good to go here. Again, pretty stacked with the equipment. Gold sword, silver arrows, plenty of magic, half magic, and red mail to boot, so he should be pretty quickly getting into phase 2. These butter sword strikes hit him pretty hard. Keeping his distance as the bats go by. On to phase 3. And a bit of a hug from Ganon. Take out the blue potion just to make sure that he can finish him off. And as we saw with Andy, Ganon is not going to sit still for anything. So both runners have the same pattern in the first attempt at Ganon. If either takes a death or a fall, the pattern is then randomized, but for at least the initial fight, they do have the same pattern.
And Diesel going for the torch glitch there, which if you're not familiar with it, basically Japanese 1.0, if you light that left torch before the right torch goes out, then the right torch will never go out. With silvers, it's less important, but if you're doing this without silvers and you have to do it with spins, it can definitely be the difference between having enough magic and not having enough magic.
One more strike and he takes down Ganon. Ganon just got to cross that bridge, get to the Triforce room, get your GGs in chat. This was not all that easy of a seed and kind of an unfortunate last location on Bombos, but DieselMartini crosses the finish line, finishes with an official SRL time of 2 hours, 15 minutes, 13 seconds. The value. We'll see if we can get Diesel in for an interview real quick.
And there we go. GG's DieselMartini. How you feeling?
Oh, it was kind of a long, hard slog, but I'm glad I finished.
Yeah, GG's on the finish. We did see that you just had to vent for a little bit when you found that Bombos on Catfish, but that is completely understandable.
Oh man, yeah, I can't believe I left it until the very, very end, but I finally found it.
So let's talk about this. From a couple perspectives. The first I want to go with is, you're taking on somebody who's won multiple tournaments, who's a highly established and regarded runner. Andy is Andy, right? What were your thoughts coming into this match?
Well, like you said, Andy is Andy. Coming in, I knew that I had a very low chance of winning, so I guess my goal was just to try and do my best, try and I don't know, make at least a decent showing for myself. I didn't expect to win, but had a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to have the chance to go back and compare what I did and the decisions I made with the decisions made by somebody who is very, very talented at this game. I feel like that's going to be a really good opportunity for me to learn. I do feel like I made a lot of routing mistakes, so that's going to be a great chance for me to sort of develop my skills a little bit.
Actually, I don't know that you really made a whole lot of routing mistakes. I think the only maybe thing we could point to is when you went up to Zora, you went from the light world rather than the dark world, which would have allowed you to get Catfish a bit earlier and saved you a bit of time, but you actually made some pretty good choices in the beginning along the same lines of Andy.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm excited to go back and compare them side by side.
Yeah, and I would also say, like, even for the first, I don't know, third half the seed, you and Andy were kind of neck and neck, very close together. Where you started getting put behind was that Tower of Hera, which was pretty mean to you.
Yeah, that was a really rough Tower of Hera for me. By the time I was done, my first thought was I definitely need to go learn Hera Pot now.
Yeah, that was one thing that we did notice that, Andy did Hera Pot. He entered with, about as much health as you did. So then once he Hera Potted, he was able to pick up the fairy in the basement and teleport right up and skip some of those Lionels.
Yeah, that would have been a big help.
But, yeah, I guess, what other thought? Do you have any other general thoughts or anything in general, or? If not, we can ask a little bit about what you're planning on for the rest of the league, stuff like that.
I thought it was a pretty okay seed. I was really surprised how much health and safeties were built in early on into the seed. I got lots of heart containers and heart pieces and things, which that was kind of nice to see. Of course, that also meant that I didn't get as much progression as early on as I was hoping, so that did draw things out a little bit. And especially with Bombos, obviously, but a few other things. I was looking for Fire Rod for a long time. And so there was a lot of searching in this seed, but overall, I didn't think it was too bad. The enemies that were randomized, I mean, there were a couple of tough places, but nothing really too terrible, I thought. Overall, a good seed.
Okay, so one thing, we got started on the restream a little late due to a previous match running over, but so we didn't actually get to see this on stream, but we were watching, Lumaga and I, of course, were watching the multi-Twitch, and there was a glove and chicken hut that Andy got very early, but did you go into Chicken Hut and nope out when you saw it was a guard's barracks, or what were your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I did go into Chicken Hut, and I tried to get the item back there. I didn't have a sword at that point, but had the hammer and was trying to use the hammer, but with the smaller hitbox on the hammer, I was really struggling to kind of take out some of those guards. And I didn't want to take a death, so I decided to nope out, and I knew I didn't have a bottle, so I was going to be coming back for Sick Kid anyway. So I decided, I'll check it, when I come back for Sick Kid. Hopefully it doesn't have anything important, and then sure enough, it had my first glove.
Yeah, but I will say, and you'll see this, Restream missed about the first 5 or 6 minutes, but later on, it didn't really cost you all that badly, because Andy did end up coming back at about the same time you did. So, because really that Moon Pearl on Desert, which you get the book for, that sort of gated the seed, kind of. Yeah,
that was a little rough. I mean, I felt a little behind, and when I found that made me feel a little bit better, because I figured that probably wasn't something that Andy was able to get to super fast. But yeah, that was a little tough.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts about the next few weeks of the league? Are there any weeks you're specifically looking forward to, or specifically putting someone else like our tracker Tyler, making them do the week instead?
Yeah. So. The Cross Keys week scares the heck out of me, so I made sure we had Tyler Salt and my other teammate Zelda fan for that week. So I won't be doing Cross Keys. I will be doing Mystery next week, so there is a chance that I might end up doing it anyway, so hopefully I don't have to do that. But I know that Tyler Salt's been practicing the Cross Keys and trying to get a good feel for it, and I'm sure he'll put up a good showing for our team.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you have any last thoughts on this, or otherwise I'll probably give us a little outro here?
No, I just really enjoyed the race, had a lot of fun. I want to give a shout out to you guys. Thank you for commenting, and Tyler Salt, as well as all the people behind the scenes who did the restream. Really appreciate everybody's efforts. It's been a blast being in the league, so thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and GG's again. And also congratulations to Andy, who did an interview earlier. So after this, the Pug Trio is currently 4-1. The Long Shots are currently 1-4. The next match between these two teams, which will also be Randomizer, is on Saturday at 8:10 p.m. So this is actually the end of the Randomizer for the night. The next match is about midday tomorrow in U.S. Eastern Standard Time. Please check ALTTPRleague.com for the information about that, the schedule. And then my name is Arusta. Thank you to my co-commentator Lumaga as well. Thank you to our tracker Tyler Salt, and of course the SpeedGaming family of networks for letting us host here. Thank you everybody for watching, and have a good night.